When people are looting Nike stores here in Los Angeles, they're not going to feed their families with those shoes. They are stealing most likely to further drug addiction or just to plain make money. And so the progressive movement has really taken us away from common sense. They live in a fantasy world, and they really see the perpetrators of these crimes as victims of the criminal justice system.
Welcome to Undercurrents, our daily news show from Unheard's Washington Bureau. Today's guest is Soledad Ursúa. Subscribe here wherever you get your podcasts and over at undercurrents.tv for the full premium experience of the show. Today's a special California edition of Undercurrents, and with a new president-elect, the election results in California last week got much less attention than they deserved. That coming despite those results actually bolstering one of the major narratives that emerged from Kamala Harris's loss. Democrats now own an unpopular brand tainted by extreme progressive policy shifts. Harris, for what it's worth, was elevated to the vice presidency after being a fixture in California politics and ultimately, of course, serving as one of the state's senators. Now, reacting to the vote totals in California, Fox News contributor Steve Hilton put it this way: common sense is returning to California. Hilton listed Proposition 36 passing, quote, overwhelmingly, the loss of Los Angeles County District Attorney George Gascon, the losses of the mayors of San Francisco and Oakland, and Republican gains in the state legislature, among other items that proved California was experiencing a shift. Proposition 36 will roll back soft-on-crime policies. Gascon, a progressive DA who backed those policies, lost his re-election bid in deep blue LA County by more than 20 points. The San Francisco Gate reported as of Thursday, 10 of California's 58 counties flipped from blue to red, choosing Joe Biden in 2020 and Trump in 2024. Joining us now to dive deep into what appears to be a seismic shift in the Golden State is Soledad Ursúa of the Manhattan Institute, who's followed these trends very closely for years and covers them for us at Unheard. Soledad, thank you for being here.
Hi, and good morning from California.
Maybe you could start, Soledad, by just walking us through some of the results from election night in California, because Californians are always voting on everything, all the various referendums. There's Proposition 36 this time around. There were mayoral races that are of interest, but maybe we just start with Prop 36. Can you tell us basically what happened with that referendum just on election night as voters voted down, what was it, Prop 47 that was overturned, part of it by 36?
Yes, and it feels like a great day in California because crime is now illegal again. And many of these election results, they're still coming in. So we don't know in a lot of these races. And that's because in California, we allow ballots to arrive in the mail up to 7 days after Election Day. So there are still things changing. But what you see is that Prop 36 has overwhelmingly passed with 70% of Californians voting in favor. What it ultimately does is it reforms Prop 47. This was passed in 2014. It was a progressive style attempt to reform the criminal justice system. It was basically sold to voters with the false bill of goods. At the time, General Attorney Kamala Harris wrote up the bill as the Safer Communities Act. What we've seen is it's actually made communities much more dangerous. What it did was it took certain felony offenses and downgraded them to misdemeanors. So through this, we've seen this explosion in crime, drug dealing, drug use. We've seen smash and grabs. And so this is really what has affected most Californians today. Many of crimes that would put you in jail, let's say masturbating in public defecation, using meth or heroin. Today, those are just slap in the wrist misdemeanors. And so when the police are called out, residents are very frustrated because they simply say, hey, this is a quality of life issue. This person is not breaking the law. So Californians have been very frustrated. So what Prop 36 did was reform this. We are going back to common sense policing. You basically have two chances. If you break those, you will end up in jail again. And what it also does is it mandates treatment. So many of these crimes are really crimes of drug addiction. The left tries to cover these up and say that, they're just stealing bread to feed their families. That's not the case. What's happening in California is we have a major drug use addiction crisis. And so people are stealing to feed their drug addiction problems. So thankfully, this will mandate treatment for many of these crimes. And hopefully we can start to get back on the path towards recovery for, tens of thousands of people who are living on our streets.
My understanding is also that George Gascon, who was ousted on election night, was part of the architect of Prop 47. And, we can take a trip over to Deep Blue, Los Angeles County. Gascon loses to Nathan Hochman. And that seems to be part of this wave that crashed on the shores of California. What can we take from Gascon's loss, especially as it's coupled with the win on 36?
And what we're really seeing is a rejection of many of these progressive policies. Gascon was one of the architects of Prop 47 as well. And it's taken a long time because he has survived 2 recall attempts by voters of LA County. But it was finally in this re-election campaign that he was also overwhelmingly beaten by, up-and-comer Nathan Hochman, who is promising a return to law and order. We're seeing that, even in liberal San Francisco, where progressive mayor London Breed, she just conceded her election last night. They have ranked choice voting there. She came in 3rd. So what we're seeing is that voters are overwhelmingly tired of these policies. So at least in LA County, we will see a return to, common sense policing. But what's interesting, too, is that it's very mixed because in the city that I live in, I'm in Los Angeles City, the voters just elected another Democratic Socialist of America to the city council. And this was a woman where she had gotten into some controversy the week before the election. A leaked audio recording came out of her disparaging the police, and yet she still sailed to victory. In next door Santa Monica, this is a much more upscale, small coastal community. They elected a slate of progressive DSA-aligned candidates. And so both Los Angeles City and Santa Monica are dealing with serious issues with homelessness. They've been involved in a string of homeless on homeless attacks and murders. And so it's very confusing. What we're seeing is that California is starting to lean more conservative, but there are some cities that, just have a very progressive focus and are continuing down towards the left.
Well, let's stay in the Bay Area because London Breed is somewhat of a fascinating figure, someone who actually had the guts, or maybe we can't even say that it was courageous because there were so obviously political problems for her, to walk back prior progressive convictions, at least that she, seemed to hold. So she now ends up coming in 3rd, as the votes are right now in San Francisco. What does that tell us? That seems like a huge case study, Soledad.
Mayor Breed, she's not brave. She's an opportunist. Let's be real. She only changed her stance when it looked like that she was overwhelmingly not going to win re-election. And that's huge. There's a major benefit for an incumbent to stay in office. It's nearly impossible to vote one of them out of office. So she saw the writing on the wall, and that's when her policy changed. And she's trying to solve the problem that she essentially created. We saw that too, where in recent weeks, when social workers were going out to talk to the homeless, they were actually offering them a bus ticket out of San Francisco instead of offering services. And so, of course, many of those people have elected to come to Los Angeles. So we only see her taking a more moderate approach when she realizes that she was going to lose the election. And that's what so many of our elected officials have done in California. They simply go where the wind is blowing. And so for some of these people, it's just too little too late. The voters remembered that they were actually part of the problem. And thankfully, the voters have voted them out. The same case with George Gascon as well.
And Breed, I believe, actually said she supported Prop 36. Gavin Newsom came out against it. I think, what can you tell us about how Democrats were divided on 36 and the broader issue of crime now that, as many people, yourself included, see it, myself included, see it, they sort of had their opportunity to do this laboratory experiment with progressive crime policies, and it's obviously failed in the eyes of voters.
For Mayor Breed, she had to come out and support Prop 36 because her election was on the line. She was obviously going to lose if she didn't. For someone like Gavin Newsom, he actually came out challenging it and was trying to get it taken off of the ballot. That's very undemocratic of him. But for him, that really is so closely aligned with his legacy. He was one of the people that supported it. Someone like a Kamala Harris as well. I know that Kamala Harris was asked how she was going to be voting on Prop 36, and she refused to answer. And she won't do that because she was one of the architects of it. She pushed it on the people. So for somebody that high up in the Democratic Party, they can't admit that it was wrong because it would show that their entire ideology was wrong. We're only seeing people in local city offices come out in support of Prop 36 because their political career is on the line. So unfortunately for, entrenched Democrats such as Newsom, they will still never admit that they were wrong, but they're probably pretty thankful now. When you look at Gavin Newsom, he still has 2 years left as governor. You just got rid of George Gascon. And so actually he's in much better shape now. He may actually get to take credit for many of the things that happen in California over the next 2 years. And, for him, it's actually going to help him.
And you just said something so interesting, which is that many of these Democrats can't admit, Kamala Harris included, they were wrong because it would prove their entire ideology was wrong, which is, I think, such a key point from all of this. Huge question here, but just maybe in a nutshell, what is that ideology? Because, there's Gascon has a very clear ideology. Other Democrats, around the country, voting Democrats, average voting Democrats, maybe black voters, have their own ideology about, as you say, Soledad, common sense policing. But what is the ideology that's really been proven wrong? Where did it come from? How did it rise so quickly in California?
It's really based in race and identity politics. Progressives believe that, we are born, everything is racist, that the police are racist, the criminal justice system is racist, everything is racist. And so they really take personal responsibility out of the equation. So when they look at someone who is stealing, they think that this person is stealing because the system is stacked against them, because the system is racist. And they never take personal accountability into the mix. Just like AOC, she was out there saying that, they just need to steal bread to feed their families. That's the storyline out of Les Miserables. And so what you're seeing is that they're trying, when people are looting, Nike stores here in Los Angeles, they're not going to feed their families with those shoes. They are stealing most likely to further drug addiction or just to plain make money. And so the progressive movement has really taken us away from common sense. They live in a fantasy world, and they really see the perpetrators of these crimes as victims of the criminal justice system.
Is this a boost to California Republicans? The California Republican Party is a fascinating entity and has been for a long time. Obviously, you have major historical figures like Ronald Reagan and Richard Nixon, landmark icons in the sort of history of the conservative movement coming out of California. But the California Republican Party has really been in the wilderness. Can you just tell us a little bit about if these results are a boost to the California GOP or if they're more of a boost to sort of moderate Democrats in California?
I think it's actually a major surprise to the Democratic Party. When you look at just how Republicans have fared in California, nearly 40% of Californians voted for Donald Trump. So that's quite surprising. It's not as entrenched blue as one might think. And Trump did not have a ground game necessarily in California. What it makes you see is that there is potential here. When you look at the breakdown of how the counties are, basically choosing their representatives, what you see is the coastal counties, the coastal communities have all voted blue. But when you drive 20 miles inland, it's all red. So what we're seeing is that, inland California is really very much sick of the liberal policies that the coastal communities are pushing on them. So if you were in the Republican Party, you would see that, if there was any resources spent, if there was a ground game put in California, there is a major chance to flip the state red. And that would be a huge boost for Republicans because California has 50 electoral votes.
Now, how does class and race affect all of this? The conversation we were just having about this fundamental ideology that has been tested and really proven wrong. So where does that ideology go wrong if they claim to be the champions of the poor and the black and brown Californians?
Well, ultimately, they lost the national election because they were focusing on issues such as abortion and climate change. When you talk to actual working class voters, they are concerned about inflation, crime. In California, we have the highest electric rates in the nation. So it's absurd. And what they've also really just sort of dismissed is, what working class people want. Another thing that they very much underestimated is the Latino vote. Latinos are overwhelmingly supporting Donald Trump. He has high favorability among Latino men. And guess where you're going to find a lot of Latino men? California. Because Latinos now make up 40% of the state's population. So one of the biggest mistakes of Democrats is to just not to basically to take the Latino vote for granted. They have historically seen Latinos voting in their favor, but we're seeing a major break now. And so perhaps for California and the GOP, they should really look to further the Latino vote, who's overwhelmingly voting for the party of Donald Trump now.
Now, one area we haven't covered yet is Oakland, which I understand also had some interesting results on election night. Soledad, what can you tell us about what happened just down the way from San Francisco over in Oakland?
It's basically exceeded all expectations. It's doing much worse than any of the crime-ridden cities. It actually makes Los Angeles look good. And so there you have Mayor Sheng Tao. It does appear that the recall effort launched by citizens is going to go through. She had also been under investigation by the FBI recently. So I think there are some questions as to, what she was really doing in office. But it does appear she is also somebody who defunded the police. So it looks like the citizens of Oakland have also had enough, and that there is it's incredible to be able to recall an elected official. It's a very hard undertaking. It requires serious resources and community organizing, and it does appear that they have been victorious.
And in Oakland, my understanding is also that a group of particularly animated Black activists have been really, really active in the movement to sort of restore common sense and to oust some Democrats and fight some of these overly progressive policies. What can you tell us about that?
Well, it's very much a community-focused organizing group that has done this. Many people say that, it's the Republican recall and there's dark money interests at work. That is not true at all in this case. It's literally just people in the community who were just sick and tired of the crime and started knocking door to door, talking to community members. It was a neighbors against Sheng Tao. So it's very interesting to just see the level of local community involvement. And these people have effectively brought about significant change for their community.
Finally, what about the influence of Asian American voters in California, where there it also, according to some polling, looks like there's some pretty interesting movement. And we've seen that maybe you can talk more about this, but in referendums in the past in the state of California, just in the last couple of years, how influential has that been in rolling back some of these policies and some of these candidates?
We're seeing that the Asian community is also moving more conservative. When we think about the first Soros-funded district attorney that was recalled, that was actually Chesa Boudin. That was in San Francisco. And it was the Asian community that was largely responsible for organizing, to getting the signatures to recall him, and to ultimately taking him out. So that was the very first Soros-funded DA to get recalled. And it was largely thanks to the Asian American community. So we are seeing that communities of color, the people that these progressives claim to champion, it's really them that is moving against the progressives and bringing about this change. So we are seeing this rejection of progressive values by working class and communities of color.
That's so interesting because you said earlier that you described accurately the ideology that's tested and failed in California as one that was driven by, quote, identity politics. And identity politics, Democrats believed, and actually even some Republicans believed, for example, after Mitt Romney lost the 2012 presidential election, that identity politics would bolster support from various identity groups. But it sounds like actually, Soledad, in California, if we look at it as sort of the laboratory of identity politics, it's turning off people in various identity groups.
I think what it's really doing is just exposing some of the bigotry in the Democratic Party. The day after the election, I was watching, the mainstream media on The View. They're essentially blaming Latinos for voting for Trump. They're saying that we're uneducated. Basically, we don't know what we're voting for. I mean, that is very offensive to what are largely Mexican Americans, second, third generation, who just want better lives for their families. So we're seeing this outlash by many of these progressives and largely blaming Black and Latino men for their candidate failing. Their candidate did not provide a great vision. They did not talk about the issues, and they lost. And instead of accepting that and wondering what was wrong with their platform, they are now placing this blame over their loss on racism and sexism among Black and Latinos. So it's very wild. What we're seeing is that what they really do is just project. Perhaps they are the racist ones. Perhaps they are the bigoted ones. And maybe they should take some self-reflection time to really look into this.
Soledad Ursúa, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe here on the Undercurrents YouTube channel. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and over at undercurrents.tv for the full premium experience of the show. We'll see you back here with more Undercurrents tomorrow.